When analyzing the decorated history of pro wrestling, it's truly staggering how many atrocious gimmicks have been presented in top companies such as WWE and WCW. And most of the gimmicks on this list are remembered for incredibly negative reasons, and leading fans to question what that wrestling company was actually thinking in debuting such awful gimmicks. Join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at the top 100 worst wrestling gimmicks. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Also check out our new website, Wrestlelamia.com. There you will find some exclusive lists and breaking news. Number 100, Super Shockmaster. The Shockmaster is well established as having arguably the worst debut in pro wrestling, yet WCW weren't giving up hope on the character as they proceeded to debut a new version of the character titled a Super Shockmaster. The Super Shockmaster would wear a cheap blue mask, and it was clear that WCW were just trying to get any value they could out of the Shockmaster name. Or where's the original? Well, we'll get into that. Number 99, The Executioner. The Executioner was portrayed by Terry Gordy, and the gimmick was that of an ex-druid. The Executioner teamed up with Mankind and feuded with The Undertaker, but the crowd failed to connect to such a lackluster character. Number 98, The Terrorist. The WCW decided to debut a character known as The Terrorist on their product in the late 80s. Now you can probably guess what the gimmick was supposed to represent, and it's unclear what on earth WCW executives were thinking at the time. Number 97, New Year's Baby. A former WWE champion Big Show was portrayed some atrocious gimmicks during his career. For instance, in late 2013, Vince McMahon was unhappy with his weight gain, so he made the Big Show become the New Year's Baby on Raw. This was obviously designed to humiliate the Big Show, and it's widely regarded as a low point in his career. Number 96, Cha Cha Ping. Before Gunther became the ring general, he portrayed a character called Cha Cha Ping. This would see the talented star having brightly colored hair and wear a green singlet. It's safe to say it's obvious why this character failed to get over. Number 95, The Black Scorpion. The Black Scorpion was an infamous gimmick in WCW that was portrayed by several different wrestlers. The character debuted as an arch nemesis for Sting, and initially the role was played by Ole Anderson and then later Al Perez. When Perez quit, WCW had to think of an alternative creative outcome. It was at the 1990 Starrcade event that Sting defeated the Scorpion and finally unmasked the character, revealing Ric Flair to be the one behind the gimmick. Number 94, Techno Team 2000. Techno Team were a team that debuted in WWE's New Gen era. The duo wore silver and maroon outfits and was supposedly ahead of their time. The gimmick was designed to be a futuristic style gimmick, but it fell completely flat with the audience. Number 93, Piggy James. Piggy James was one of the more controversial and hated gimmicks in stories of the PG era. It saw Layla and Michelle McCool constantly belittle Mickie James and mock her weight, and they would call her Piggy James. Layla and McCool would even wear a fat suit in the hopes of embarrassing James as much as humanly possible. Number 92, The Goon. The Goon was in essence a hockey player turned wrestler, and that was the most substance the gimmick had. Interestingly, it's widely believed that Vince McMahon wanted Chris Jericho to play the dreaded character, but thankfully Y2J turned the proposal down. Number 91, Paul Burchill, incest character. Paul Burchill's pirate persona was fun and unique, but the character he portrayed after the persona had run its course was truly disturbing. In 2008, Burchill and his kayfabe sister Katie Leah would become an on-screen duo, and the controversial gimmick and storyline was that they were in love with each other. Number 90, Fantasio. WWE would try to get anything and everything over in the New Gen era, and that included a wrestler who was a magician. Fantasio wore a black and white mime mask that revealed matching face paint when removed, and he performed basic magic tricks that the fans could care less about. Number 89, Evad Sullivan. In 1994, WCW debuted Dave Sullivan, who was supposed to be the dyslexic brother of Kevin Sullivan. Due to his dyslexia, he would mispronounce his name as Evad. This was a gimmick that had aged horribly and would have no place in modern wrestling. Number 88, Damien Demento. Damien Demento is mostly known for being in the first ever main event of Raw against The Undertaker. The gimmick was that of an individual who hailed from the outer reaches of your mind, and he was mentally disturbed. Well, that's according to the WWE commentators at least. Number 87, Farouk, Gladiator gimmick. When WWE signed former WCW champion Ron Simmons, they of course decided to give him the most ridiculous gimmick imaginable. His first gimmick in WWE was that of Farouk Assad, who was supposedly a gladiator, and the only way we were supposed to know that he was a gladiator was from his bizarrely misshapen helmet. But why was he blue? Number 86. Muffy. Muffy was Stephanie McMahon's personal trainer, and she only made a few appearances during the Attitude Era before her undeveloped character was scrapped indefinitely. Number 85. Yoshi Kwan. WCW's Yoshi Kwan was a gimmick which saw British wrestler Chris Champion wearing makeup in an attempt to resemble an Asian character. The gimmick was tasteless, backwards, and had really no place in wrestling. Number 84. Braun the Leprechaun. Braun the Leprechaun first appeared in the summer of 1996 in WCW, and he was managed by Jimmy Hart. It was unclear if the gimmick was supposed to be serious or not, as every single segment Braun was involved in felt awkward and cheap. Nevertheless, the persona was portrayed by Dwayne Bruce, who would go on to become a trainer at the WCW Power Plant. Number 83. Bongo the Caveman. The Bongo the Caveman gimmick only lasted weeks in WCW, and for good reason. The gimmick was portrayed by Tim Parker, and he wore a loincloth outfit and carried a club. It was utterly ridiculous that WCW genuinely thought that this would get over. Number 82. Leviathan. Long before Batista was, well, Batista, he portrayed a character in FCW called Leviathan. This gimmick was basically a demon, but it was incredibly cringeworthy, and it was apparent that Batista wasn't comfortable in the role. Thankfully, he moved on to something better. Number 81. Black Rain. When Goldust signed with TNA, he became Black Rain. Black Rain was a more sinister version of the beloved Goldust character, but it fell flat. The most interesting thing about the persona was that Black Rain had a pet rat. Yeah, that was it. Number 80. The Gobbledygooker. The 1990 Survivor Series saw one of the most infamous debuts of all time, as the Gobbledygooker made his WWE debut. At the Survivor Series event, a huge egg hatched, and it was revealed to be the Gooker played by Hector Guerrero. The crowd in attendance began to boo as they expected something special, and they certainly didn't expect someone to appear dressed in a literal bird costume. Initial plans called for the Gobbledygooker to represent the company as a mascot, yet due to the atrocious feedback from fans, the character was thankfully scrapped. Number 79. Braden Walker. Chris Harris attained great success in TNA, yet when he signed for WWE, he was turned into an utter joke. Harris would become Braden Walker on the ECW brand, and it was unclear what exactly his gimmick was supposed to be, other than making the occasional knock-knock joke. The gimmick was scrapped quickly, and WWE had no future plans for the former TNA Tag Team Champion. Number 78. ECW Zombie. When WWE's version of ECW launched in 2006, they decided to debut a zombie character. This was supposed to be a serious character, but it was laughable at best, and it was brutalized by the Sandman to the delight of the ECW audience. Number 77. Jim Neidhart, a KKK member. At an independent show in 1995, Virgil was set to take on a wrestler known as Thug. And when Thug made his way down to the ring, it appeared as if Thug and his bodyguard were dressed in a Ku Klux Klan outfit. The bodyguard then revealed himself to be former Hart Foundation member Jim Neidhart. The two then proceeded to lay out Virgil and would even begin to hang him from the ring ropes. Number 76. The Stormtrooper. The Stormtrooper debuted in 1988 in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and the gimmick was that the Stormtrooper was a literal Nazi. Yeah, that's right, a Nazi. The masked man would goose step into the ring and would wear swastikas all over his body. Even in 1988, this might have seemed a little over the top. Number 75. Seven. When Goldust returned to WCW in late 1999, he began to portray a character known as Seven. The character is mostly known for bizarre and creepy vignettes, which saw him standing outside a child's bedroom window. The gimmick was reported to have been based on the Strangers from the movie Dark City, but was eventually dropped after there was concern that the gimmick was being interpreted as a child abductor. Number 74. Chief Morley. When the Val Venus character had run its natural course, WWE decided to reintroduce Venus under his real name of Sean Morley, and he would eventually become an authority figure in WWE known as Chief Morley. This gimmick was completely lifeless and received zero reaction from the audience. Number 73. The Renegade. The Renegade was basically WCW's cheap version of the Ultimate Warrior, and nobody could ever figure out the point of the character's existence. WCW were doing okay in terms of ratings and the creative direction was being well received, so to debut a character that was in essence a parody of an iconic WWE gimmick seemed nonsensical. Number 72. Buzzkill. Vince Russo would do anything he could to make WCW stand out, and this extended to ripping off beloved WWE characters. Russo would give Brad Armstrong the gimmick of Buzzkill, and it was a complete rip-off of his brother the Road Dogg's gimmick in WWE. Russo would even implement a theme that was oddly similar to the New Age Outlaws' trademark theme song. The gimmick, to nobody's surprise, was met with disdain from whatever fans WCW had left at the time. Number 71. Fat Chick Thriller. Following WCW's Bash at the Beach event in 2000, WCW decided to repackage Mike Awesome as the Fat Chick Thriller. Awesome would become infatuated with larger women, and this is notoriously one of the worst gimmicks WCW could have possibly given the talented star. Number 7. TL Hopper. WWE's obsession of debuting wrestlers with professions went too far when they debuted TL Hopper. Hopper was a stereotypical plumber and fell flat upon arrival. How a plumber gimmick was supposed to get over in WWE is anyone's guess. Number 69. Stuttering Matt Morgan. When WWE reintroduced Matt Morgan in 2005, they decided to give him a stuttering gimmick. This was designed to be a heel gimmick, but a stutter instantly making a wrestler a heel was a bold and daring creative choice. Number 68. The Real Double J. A Road Dogg has been given some awful gimmicks over his career, but the Real Double J was perhaps the worst. Following Jeff Jarrett's WWE departure, Road Dogg would claim that he was the real singer of the song With My Baby Tonight, and the gimmick and character was quickly relegated to the lower mid-card. Number 67. The Funkasaurus. Fans were stunned when Brodus Clay returned to WWE TV as a dancing dinosaur from Planet Funk. Despite the gimmick and character having a short shelf life, WWE put a ton of effort into making the character work, and he was even given an extended segment at WrestleMania 28. Number 66. Leif Cassidy. Before Al Snow had an interesting relationship with a mannequin head, he would portray Leif Cassidy in WWE. Cassidy would join forces with Marty Jannetty to form the New Rockers, and the crowd simply didn't care about the reincarnation of one of the most popular tag teams of all time. Number 65. Shinobi. The New Rockers gimmick wasn't the only gimmick WWE would hope to get Al Snow over, as he also portrayed an infamous character called Shinobi, who was a ninja assassin. The character is mostly known for losing to Shawn Michaels, and interestingly, WWE would bring a version of the character back in 2004 for a one-off match with Tajiri. Number 64. Tugboat. Fred Ottman is considered to be one of the nicest guys in wrestling, but the majority of his gimmicks are remembered for all the wrong reasons. His character of Tugboat was supposedly trained by Hulk Hogan, and it would see Tugboat wear a red striped shirt and a sailor's hat. The most entertaining thing about the gimmick was that Tugboat would often pull an imaginary cord out of an air horn and make the hilarious Number 63. Doink the Friendly Clown. When Doink the Clown first arrived in WWE, he was presented as a menacing and scary heel. Then WWE made the call to turn him babyface, and this is when the gimmick went completely downhill. The gimmick turned into a kid-friendly, cartoonish character that fell dramatically down the card. It was a massive shame as the villainous version of Doink had so much potential. Number 62. Vinny Vegas. Before Diesel and Kevin Nash came Vinny Vegas. Vegas was basically a wisecracking mobster, but it was apparent that this wasn't the gimmick or character that was going to take Nash to superstardom. Number 61. Oz. As well as Vinny Vegas, Nash also portrayed one of the most notorious gimmicks in WCW history, as he portrayed a character known as Oz. Oz was a character based on the children's story The Wizard of Oz, and it saw Nash wear a ridiculous lime green robe and laughable fake grey beard. Number 60. Who. A gimmick being introduced so WWE commentators can make terrible puns is never a good idea, but that was the logic of giving Jim Neidhart the Who gimmick in the 90s. Fans literally knew nothing about the gimmick or character, and Who's matches just consisted of a few minutes of Vince McMahon and Jerry Lawler making unfunny jokes at the commentary desk. Number 59. General Huge Erection. When Hugh Morris became the leader of the Misfits in action in WCW, he decided to rebrand himself as General Huge Erection. The obvious pun aside, the gimmick was a complete waste of time, as the only thing different about Morris's presentation was that he wore military-themed gear. Number 58. The Shark. John Tenta was so determined to make his shark gimmick work in WCW that he even changed the tattoo on his arm from a tiger to a shark. The gimmick of a wrestler having characteristics of sharks could only go so far. Despite Tenta's commitment, the gimmick was never going to work. Number 57. Giant Silver. Giant Silver had size, presence, and WWE were no doubt going to try and make him a main event attraction. Silver would become a member of the Oddities faction, but whenever he wrestled, he was quickly exposed as he was appalling in the ring. His gimmick was literally that he was tall and would wear casual clothing like he was visiting a local mall. Number 56. Golga. Speaking of the Oddities faction, Golga's gimmick was perhaps even worse. Golga was portrayed by John Tenta, and his gimmick saw him wear a mask due to a bone disorder, and he would be obsessed with Eric Cartman from South Park. Number 55. the fake Undertaker. The WWE believed that debuting a fake version of The Undertaker and then reintroducing the real Undertaker would do major business, so much so that a match between the two main evented at the '94 SummerSlam. The gimmick was widely criticized as fans simply didn't care, all they wanted to see was Mark Calloway's iconic portrayal on their screen. Number 54, the Red Rooster. Terry Taylor had immense talent as a pro wrestler, but the Red Rooster persona was never going to make him world champion. The infamous gimmick saw him don red tights and he would even strut like a rooster to the sheer confusion of the audience. Number 53, the Kiss Demon. The Kiss Demon persona was introduced as part of WCW's deal with the band Kiss. The Demon's entire presentation was based on Gene Simmons and was portrayed by Dale Torberg. While visually impressive, the gimmick had no purpose other than to promote Kiss, and it didn't help that Torberg wasn't exactly bright hot in the ring, so most of the Demon's matches were very less than stellar. Number 52, Akeem. In 1988, Slick announced that WWE star The One Man Gang was now reborn as African and planned to embrace his roots. Slick then announced that Gang would be known as his new name, Akeem the African Dream. The gimmick instantly received backlash as Akeem delivered a promo that was deemed as slightly racist. The One Man Gang character was popular and had more room to grow, but the Akeem persona was completely insensitive and not what fans were pushing to see. Number 51, Big Josh. Upon signing with WCW, Matt Osborne was given the gimmick of Big Josh. The gimmick must have taken a matter of seconds to come up with, as he was an outdoorsman who had a friendly connection with bears, even bringing some down to the ring, which was pretty cool. Number 50, Skip Sheffield. Now before debuting as Ryback, Ryan Reeves used a character known as Skip Sheffield. The gimmick had poor writing and execution behind it, as the character was just a cowboy, a gimmick that had been delivered 100 times before. Number 49, The Johnsons TNA. The Johnsons tag team represented the worst of TNA. The team, which consisted of Richard and Rod Johnson, would compete in flesh-colored bodysuits, which were without question amongst the most horrific ring attires in wrestling history. This was the bottom of the barrel in terms of a character and gimmick, and it's hardly a surprise their run in the company was brief. Number 48, The Dicks. In 2005, WWE decided to debut a new tag team known as The Dicks. The duo were dressed as Chippendales dancers, and the gimmick was dead on arrival, as the crowd just didn't care about such a terrible gimmick, and we don't blame them. Number 47, The Ding Dongs. The Ding Dongs are often found at the top of the list of WCW's worst gimmicks. WCW executives believed that the duo would be insanely popular in the company, but they were wrong, very wrong, as the moment the duo appeared on screen wearing colourful outfits, the crowd booed immediately. Now the gimmick is hard to explain, but in essence, one of the members of the Ding Dongs would ring a bell on the outside when the other was on the offense. It was incredibly frustrating, and it's no surprise the WCW audience absolutely loathed it. Number 47, Oklahoma. Now, there have been some tasteless and controversial parodies over the years, but the parody of Jim Ross that WCW presented in 2000 went a step too far. The character would be known as Oklahoma and portrayed by former WWE writer Ed Ferrara. Ferrara would dress in a manner similar to JR, but he would mock JR's Bell's palsy, which was where the majority of the criticism for the character came from. Number 45, Meat. And most fans remember Sean Stasiak for his time in WCW, or you may not have, but he also had a number of runs in WWE. His run in 1999 came as the infamous character known as Meat. Meat was presented as a boy toy for the Pretty Mean Sisters, and it goes without saying that the name of Meat was holding him back from ever being taken seriously. Number 45, Shelton Benjamin's Mama. During the Ruthless Aggression era, WWE attempted to do something new with Shelton Benjamin. Benjamin would embark on a losing streak, which led to his Mama becoming an on-air character. Mama Benjamin would slap and yell at Benjamin whenever he lost, and she slowly began to interfere in his matches, turning him heel in the process. Number 43, Saba Simba. In 1990, the legendary Tony Atlas returned to WWE under the name of Saba Simba. In a unique move, WWE acknowledged the fact that the new character was in fact Atlas, but Vince McMahon on commentary decided to state that Atlas had rediscovered his roots and had now legally changed his name to Saba Simba. The gimmick was a warrior of a tribe, but it lacked any depth, and naturally it received a ton of criticism from being based on a racist stereotype. Number 42, Naked Midian. And do we need to say any more? Well, we still will. So after his dealings with the Ministry and Darkness were over, WWE decided to repackage Midian as Naked Midian. He'd run around the arena in a thong, and this was the Attitude Era at its very worst. Number 41, Isaac Yankem DDS. Before Glenn Jacobs was chosen to portray the iconic Kane character, he was given the character of an evil dentist, Isaac Yankem DDS. Now, to be fair, Jacobs did the best with a terrible gimmick, and he did manage to get a few matches with Bret Hart, which was great experience for a name that would be a mainstay with WWE for the next 2 decades. Number 40, Friar Ferguson. In April of '93, Mike Bell would be given the gimmick of Friar Ferguson. Ferguson was a mad monk, and the character received backlash from the Catholic Church of New York, leading to WWE scrapping the character indefinitely. Number 39, Bastion Booger. Mike Bell's next character would arguably be even worse, as Bell became Bastion Booger. Booger was an unkempt, greedy man who wrestled in an attire that was way too revealing. Booger's entire character was that he was disgusting, and the WWE commentary team would spend the majority of his matches commenting on his unpleasant odor. He by far has the most disgusting finisher ever in WWE or even wrestling. Number 38, the Shockmaster. The Shockmaster's debut in WCW has been coined as wrestling's most infamous debut due to how downright hilarious and botched it was. WCW's plans for the Shockmaster debut were for him to make a dramatic entrance on Flair for the Gold, but sadly it went horribly wrong. In the segment, the camera panned to a section of the set where a small pyro explosion went off. The Shockmaster then crashed through the wall wearing a Stormtrooper helmet which was covered in silver glitter. The Shockmaster would fall over and his helmet awkwardly stumbled off his head. The infamous character was then doomed from this point onwards. You can even hear the Bulldog say he fell on his ass. Number 37, Kerwin White. In 2005, WWE decided to give Chavo Guerrero a brand new gimmick. Chavo would now go under the name of Kerwin White, and the gimmick would revolve around Chavo denouncing his Mexican heritage. The gimmick infamously involved Chavo making insensitive racial remarks to black wrestlers, which was a cheap and tasteless way to get heat on the character. Number 36, the Booty Man. A Brutus Beefcake was an outstanding gimmick, but unfortunately most of Ed Leslie's other gimmicks were atrociously executed. One of his gimmicks in WCW saw him become the Booty Man. The gimmick involved him being infatuated with his own backside, and of course it fell flat almost instantly. Number 35, the Running Man. Now, before Beefcake had the dreaded Booty Man gimmick, he portrayed a character that was never given an official name by WCW. In 1991, a masked character would run in during matches, attack heels, and then just disappear. It was never made clear what the creative plans were for the character, but it was quickly dropped without any explanation. Number 34, Rockabilly. Billy Gunn was never going to break out of the lower mid-card with the Rockabilly gimmick. The character saw him become the protege of the Honky Tonk Man, and it came across incredibly forced on WWE TV. Thankfully, WWE quickly realized this and decided to have Gunn join forces with the Road Dogg to become the New Age Outlaws. Number 33, Key. The Attitude Era had endless characters that have aged terribly, and Key is certainly one of them. Key was portrayed by Vic Grimes, and his character was that he was a drug dealer and was somewhat associated with Prince Albert and Droz. Number 32, PG-13. PG-13 were a tag team combination consisting of JC Ice and Wolfie D. The duo were known for delivering horrible raps in the ring and having 2 of the worst wrestling names of all time. Number 31, Moppy. The WWE decided to give the talented Perry Saturn a new gimmick in 2001. Saturn would fall in love with a mop. Yeah, that's right, a mop. Whilst the gimmick was ridiculous, it did result in Saturn receiving the most positive crowd response of his entire WWE tenure. Number 30, Max Moon. The idea for the Max Moon character, according to Conan, was a cyborg that was from outer space. The costume itself reportedly cost $13,000, meaning that WWE heavily invested in the bizarre and outlandish character. The character would debut in 1992 and would be portrayed by Conan, but the gimmick fell flat instantly and Conan opted to leave WWE due to backstage issues. Despite the gimmick being lackluster at best, McMahon decided to put the rather comedic costume on another wrestler, that being Paul Diamond. Number 29, Man Mountain Rock. Man Mountain Rock debuted in 1995 and he wore a colourful outfit and played a large guitar shaped as the classic WWF logo. The gimmick was incredibly annoying and it was unclear if fans were supposed to root or detest the character. Number 28, Quang. Quang was portrayed by Savio Vega and the character made his official WWE debut in early 1994. The gimmick was criticized for being cliché and stereotypical as the gimmick was a mysterious Asian wrestler, and to try and enhance the gimmick, WWE had Quang use martial arts moves and of course the Asian mist. Can't forget that. Number 27, Avatar. In an attempt to cash in on the success and popularity of the Power Rangers, WWE would give the future Al Snow a character known as Avatar. The gimmick saw him come to the ring and put on a mask to wrestle, and it was implied that he was obtaining strength and power from the mask. Number 26. Beaver Cleavage. When Headbanger member Thrasher suffered an injury during the Attitude Era, WWE decided to repackage the other Headbanger Mosh and would debut a new gimmick, and it would be known as Beaver Cleavage. This character would appear in black and white vignettes with his mother, and it was implied that their association went beyond the normal mother and son relationship. Yeah, we'll let you work that one out. Number 25. Chaz, the Woman Beater. Speaking of Mosh, the Beaver Cleavage character wasn't his only terrible gimmick, as when that gimmick came to an end, Mosh would use the name of Chaz, and he was involved in a storyline where he was supposedly beating his girlfriend. Eventually it was discovered that his girlfriend was lying, and WWE decided to reform the Headbangers. Number 24. Giant Gonzalez. In early 1993, WWE decided they needed a new foe for The Undertaker, so they introduced the world to one of the worst characters in WWE history, Giant Gonzalez. Gonzalez legit stood at 7 feet tall and would wear a bodysuit which featured airbrushed fake muscles as well as fake hair scattered in random locations. The attire was laughable, and the audience simply couldn't take the attire or the gimmick very seriously. Number 23. Fake Diesel. When Diesel departed WWE in 1996, they decided to introduce a new version of Diesel played by the future Kane, Glenn Jacobs. The character was nonsensical, and it was evidence that WWE would do anything to try and defeat WCW in the Monday Night Wars. Number 22. Fake Razor Ramon. But it wasn't just Diesel who re-debuted following Kevin Nash's WWE exit in '96. As following the exit of Scott Hall, aka Razor Ramon, they also reintroduced the character now played by Rick Bogner. Just like the reaction to Diesel's reintroduction, the character was met with disdain from the WWE audience. Number 21. Battle Cat. A character that acted like a cat was inevitably going to debut in a promotion like WWE, and a cat-type character debuted in the 90s under the name of Battle Cat. The character donned a cat-like mask, and to express his cat-like agility, he would perform basic gymnastics around the ring. Number 20. DDP the Stalker. When WWE signed the incredibly popular DDP in 2001, they decided to turn him into a villainous stalker. DDP would stalk The Undertaker's wife, and it's widely regarded as one of the worst character changes in wrestling history, and it completely annihilated DDP's run in the company. Number 9. Duke the Dumpster Droese. Duke the Dumpster Droese debuted in WWE in 1996, and he was a literal garbage man. He would carry a trash can to the ring, and it was never made clear how on earth the fans were supposed to positively connect to such a lame and underwhelming character. Number 18. Slam Master J. In 2009, WWE opted to repackage Jesse from Jesse and Festus as Slam Master J. Slam Master J was a rapper character, but it came across as awkward, unfunny, and fans ultimately hated the new persona. Number 17. Molly Holly's Large Backside. In 2002, the women in WWE had to take any storyline and gimmick handed to them in order to be awarded any TV time at all. In the summer of 2002, the main focus when it came to Molly Holly's character revolved around her so-called large backside. Babyfaces would mock and belittle her behind on a weekly basis, and the gimmick has aged incredibly poorly. Number 16. Karrion Kross's initial main roster persona. When Karrion Kross was initially called up to the main roster, Vince McMahon decided to drastically alter his presentation. Kross would no longer have Scarlett by his side, and he would now wear a hideous helmet and suspenders. The presentation immediately destroyed Kross's aura and legitimacy, and it was hardly a surprise that he was released within a few months. Luckily, he came back and ditched the suspenders. Number 15. Jillian Hall's Revolting Growth. Before Jillian Hall debuted her singing gimmick, she was known for her image consultancy gimmick, which saw her have a bizarre growth on her face. It's unclear what this gimmick was supposed to achieve, but the most notable moment saw the boogeyman eat it off her face. Number 14. The Lesbians. In 2002, WWE became desperate to recapture the spark of the Attitude Era, so they hyped up lesbians having sex live on Raw. Of course, this never happened, and the women who were literally given the name of the Lesbians were attacked by 3-minute warning. Number 13. Natalia's Farting. In an attempt to repackage and give Natalia some much-needed character, WWE gave her a gimmick which saw her fart backstage. It was painfully unfunny, but it was apparent that Vince McMahon was finding the segments and character utterly hilarious, as the segments continued for what seemed like an eternity. Number 12. Fake Kane. One of the more criticized storylines of 2006 saw the debut of the imposter Kane, played by Luke Gallows. The real Kane was confronted by a man wearing the classic Kane attire, but the issue was that the attire was poorly fitted and it looked like WWE had purchased the outfit from a fancy dress shop. Fans had no interest in seeing two Kanes collide, and even though the real Kane was somehow supposed to be the heel in the feud, he was cheered, and the imposter Kane character was scrapped within a few weeks. Number 11. Cedric Von Hausen. Before Johnny Gargano became one of the best in-ring talents in WWE, he would make an appearance on WWE TV in 2007 under the name of Cedric Von Hausen. His gimmick was supposed to be the champion of Liechtenstein, and there was no way that Gargano was ever going to be anything more than a jobber with this dreaded gimmick. Number 10. The Yeti. Ron Reese portrayed two notorious gimmicks in WCW. In 1995, he played the character The Yeti, and the Yeti was in essence a mummy and was involved in a bizarre segment where he performed a double bear hug alongside the Giant on Hulk Hogan. Number 9. Supergiant Ninja. Ron Reese's gimmick following the Yeti would see him become the Supergiant Ninja. This gimmick was generic and dull, and the outfit looked incredibly cheap. Due to how basic and underwhelming the character was, it would be scrapped relatively quickly. Number 8. Roadblock. The Roadblock character was such a literal character that Roadblock carried a genuine roadblock to the ring, and his attire would sometimes often match the color of the sign. Based on WCW's commentary for the character, it was implied that Roadblock was unstoppable. With a name like Roadblock, fans were having a tough time buying into WCW's explanation of the gimmick. Number 7. Men at Work. Men at Work was a tag team duo consisting of Chris Kanyon and Mark Starr. The gimmick was that of construction workers, and they would come to the ring in hard hats. Steady on with those out-of-the-box gimmicks, WCW. Number 6. Arachnaman. WCW decided to give Brad Armstrong the gimmick of Arachnaman. Arachnaman had a striking resemblance to Spider-Man, and it was no surprise when Marvel Comics threatened to sue WCW and they were forced to take the superhero character off TV. Number 5. Christmas Creature. During Glenn Jacobs' time in the USWA, he portrayed a character known as the Christmas Creature. The creature competed in a green onesie with candy cane stripe, and the most interesting thing about the costume was that it was created by Jacobs' own mother. Number 4. Becky Lynch Riverdancer. When Becky Lynch debuted in NXT, WWE decided to give Lynch a generic gimmick which saw her perform an Irish dance. The gimmick was hated by the fan base, but Lynch gave it her all. Thankfully, WWE realized that Lynch had major potential as a top female star, so the Irish dancing elements of her gimmick was scrapped. Number 3. Festus. Luke Gallows would play his most infamous character to date when he portrayed the Festus persona. Festus was labeled as a mentally challenged and unresponsive man, but when the bell rung, he came alive. In a nice twist on a terrible gimmick, when Gallows joined CM Punk's Straight Edge Society, the Festus character was still canon, as CM Punk explained that Gallows' mental state as the Festus character was down to his alcohol addiction. Number 2. Abe Knuckleball Schwartz. Abe Knuckleball Schwartz's face was painted to look like a baseball, and he wore a jersey with the number 00 on the back. Schwartz was labeled as the MVP, which stood for the most violent player, but this truly never came across in his in-ring work. And number 1. Mantar. The Mantar character is widely considered to be the worst wrestling gimmick of all time. Appearing in WWE, the gimmick was that of a Minotaur who would charge and trample his opponents. The gimmick was heavily loathed upon arrival, and it was a clear indication that WWE was struggling to come up with creative and compelling characters in the mid-90s. But there you have it, folks. 100 of the worst wrestling gimmicks ever. Are there any more? Let us know in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.